All right, let's learn how we can put the theory of app architecture into practice by creating a simple data model for Bullseye. To review, remember that we need three things: the target that the user is aiming for, the current round, and the total score across all rounds. These will all be integer numbers. All right, well, let's open up Xcode and implement the game struct. Before we create our model class, I want to do a little bit of organization of our files here, just as kind of a nice practice. We can keep everything nicely organized. So I'm going to right click here and make a new group. I'm going to call this group models. This is where we're going to put our model that we'll be creating shortly. But let's sort the rest of this code that we have as well. We'll create another new group and we'll call it views. And right now we only have a single view in our app, which is content view, but later on in this course we'll be creating more views. All right, and then we're also going to create a group called app. And this is all of our kind of boilerplate other files that we need to create this app. And we're going to take everything else except for the preview content, which is also its own folder, and we're going to drag it into app. Now I'm going to hit Command B, which is a shortcut to build the app. When you hit Command R, it builds the app before running the app, but Command B builds the app without running the app. And this is just to make sure that I haven't broken anything. And the reason I ran this is because indeed we did break something. I have an error here that says the build input file blah blah info.plist cannot be found. And that is because there's a reference to this info.plist that assumes it's in the root directory here, but I've moved it into a subdirectory. So to fix it, I'll show you how you can change your project settings. So if you click Bullseye here and you want to go into the Build Settings tab and you scroll down to Packaging, you'll see bullseye/info.plist. So I'm going to double click that and change it from bullseye/info.plist to bullseye/app/info.plist. And now I'm going to hit Command B again to build, and then that error goes away. All right, so now our files are nicely sorted, and I'm just going to minimize app so I can just see views and models for right now. All right, so I'm going to right click on models and click new file, and that'll create a new file within that group. And I'm going to choose the iOS Swift file template, click next, and I'm going to name this game.swift. You can see here that game.swift is pretty much an empty file with just one line called import foundation. So we can start pretty much from scratch here. Okay, so we're going to create a new struct. So we do that by typing struct, and we're going to call this struct game. And we're going to put an open and close curly brace. And inside here, we're going to put three properties that we need. So the first is the random target value. So var for variable, which means it can change. And then we're going to put in target, colon, and this is going to be of type int, a plain integer number, no decimal points, and equal to an initial value, which we're going to set to 42. We also want the total score across all rounds. So score, colon, it's also an int, and the initial score is going to be set to 0. And then finally, we need a var for the current round, colon, int, and the first round is going to be round 1. Okay, we're going to be adding a lot more to this game struct later on, but I think this is a good starting point. So let's integrate this into our app. So switch back to content view.swift, scroll to the top. So far we have two properties here. We want to add one more. And this is also going to be a state variable because when the structure changes, for example, maybe the score changes, we want our user interface to update accordingly. So it should be a state variable. We should make it private like we have the others. It's also going to be var because it can change. Game is what we're going to call this variable or property. And it's going to be of type game. This is what we just named the struct we created, capital game. And we're going to set it equal to a new game. So the way we do this is game, open and close parentheses. This creates a new instance of that template game. All right, so now that we have this, we can update our target label. So our target label right now is hard-coded to 89. Instead of showing the hard-coded 89, we want to display the target from the game. So we want to do game.target, except game.target is an integer, and you can't put an integer inside a text. So we need to convert the integer to a string, and the way we can do that is type in string, and inside parentheses, we can put in game.target. I'm going to do Command B to make sure that that builds. And it builds okay, so I'm going to hit Option Command P to start up the preview again since it stopped. And notice that it used to be 89, but now it's 42. And 42 is the initial value that we set up in our structure here. So far, so good. Remember that every class or struct you create can have both data and methods. We've figured out the 3 pieces of data we need for Bullseye, but what methods do we need? To start, for now, we'll just like a single method that can calculate the points for a given guess. So we could call the method points, and we could have it take a single parameter, which is the slider's value. This is the first time we've written our own method in Swift, so let me take a moment to explain the syntax before we dive in. To do this, you'd simply add a block of code that looks like this before the final curly brace of your class. Basically, use the keyword func, and then you give your method a name, and then you enter an open and a closed parentheses. Inside the parentheses, you put any parameters or input that you want your method to accept. The format for any parameter is its parameter name, a colon, and then the type of the parameter. You can create more than one parameter if you'd like. You just separate them by commas. You can also have methods that take no parameters at all. In that case, you just have an open and closed parentheses with nothing at all inside. After your list of parameters, you put a dash and a greater than sign, which kind of looks like an arrow. Then you indicate the type of object that you return as the output of your method, like an int, double, or bool. Inside the curly braces, you put all of your code. When you're ready to return the output value, you enter the keyword return, and then you put the value that you want to return, like 999, 9.14, or true. Now that we know what we need, we just need to code it up. So let's switch back to Xcode. Let's add a method to calculate the points into game.swift. So click on Models, game.swift, and hit a couple new lines after these properties. Before the closed curly brace though. And then type in func to create a new function or method, and type in points, which is the name of the method. And in parentheses, we're going to put any parameters that this method takes. And it's going to take a single parameter, which we're going to call slider value, which will be the rounded slider value that we've calculated in the past. So we're going to put :int because it's going to be an int, not the double. And then we put dash greater than sign, which looks kind of like an arrow, and that indicates what does this method return. And we're going to return an integer, which is the points that you've earned. After that, put open and close curly brace, and this is the code that will run when we call this method. And for now, we're going to just temporarily return 999, just so we can make sure this works. All right, so it looks like that's looking good. So now we can switch back to contentview.swift, and we want to print out the points that we earned this round. So we want to print out now 2 things here. We're already printing out the slider's value is such and so. We also want to print out how many points you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to do /n after the period here, which makes a new line. And we could keep typing in here, but another thing you can do with strings is you can hit plus, which lets you combine 2 strings together. So I could put another string here, and it would, like ABC, and it would print out this string, and then right afterwards it would print out ABC as well. And this is just something you can do to keep your code a little more organized sometimes. So we're gonna try that out here. So for the second line, we're gonna say you scored, and then we're gonna, in string interpolation, we're gonna print out the points here in a second. We'll come back to that. Points this round. Okay, so inside here, we want to print out the points. So the way we do this is self.game lets us access our game model object, or game model instance that we've created. And we can call on that points. And remember that points takes a variable or a parameter called slider value. I'm going to select that here, colon, and then we're going to put in rounded value here. Okay, and that's it. So this is calling on our self.game instance, the points method, passing in the rounded value. This method will return the number of points, which is right now 999. That should be going into our string. So if I hit Command R to build that, type in hit me, it says you scored 999 points this round, which proves that it's calling our method and returning 999 successfully.